In the silence of a June night, the peaceful atmosphere of the small town of Edmond, South Carolina, was suddenly shattered by a chilling event, turning it into the scene of a heartbreaking mystery. The small home of the Gutierrez family, once a symbol of warmth and love, suddenly became the center of a dark enigma. So let's explore this case together. For many parents, sending their children to daycare comes with the hope that their child will be loved, protected, and nurtured when they cannot be there themselves. However, the heartbreaking reality is that cases of child abuse, even leading to fatal outcomes, still exist, often involving individuals as caregivers. "She was forever in 3, the agonizing words of the victim's mother as she grapples with the torment of her young daughter will forever at the age of 3. In March 2018, Jason Wesche dropped off his 3-year-old daughter, Hannah, at her babysitter's house as part of their routine for the past 8 months, given the neighborhood. Jason would drive past there on his way to work and pick Hannah up at the However, just minutes after leaving, Jason received a panicked call from the babysitter, informing him that Hannah had fallen and was unresponsive. Jason couldn't comprehend what he was hearing. How could the girl he had seen just moments ago suddenly collapse? It turned out that was not going to be an easy question to answer. Hannah Wesche entered the world on January 11, 2015. Jason Wesche and Adrian Lam faced struggles from the start. Jason took on the role of a single father as Adrian battled addiction, ultimately being arrested for selling and using heroin. Unfortunately, Hannah bore the consequences of her mother's addiction, being born addicted to heroin herself. In addition, Hannah also has 2 older sisters, Rachel and Caitlin. The family of 4 always appreciates the simple pleasures of life. Despite this tumultuous beginning, Hannah's resilient spirit shone through. She grew into a bright young toddler with a real zest for life. She adored spending time with her dad. Their bond was evident in the simple joys they shared, like munching on cereal together and watching TV shows side by side. When Hannah was about 2 years old, Jason and she relocated to a new residence on Shank Road, OH. Jason found a job at a nearby construction company, so the move was a practice. With Jason occupied with work during the day, he needed reliable childcare for Hannah. Lindsay appeared to be just the kind of babysitter you would want to take care of your kids, a petite mother of 2 standing, residing only 40-50 meters in Shank Road from Jason and Hannah's home. She lived with her longtime partner, Timothy Smith, and their 2 daughters. She held an associate degree in preschool education and supplemented her income by Lindsay began looking after Hannah in 2017, from 8 to 12 hours days in week. Jason was a single father. As the morning of March 8, 2018 dawned, Jason followed his familiar routine of preparing to. Shortly after dropping Hannah in Lindsay's house at around 7:00 a.m., Jason traveled a few minutes down the road when his phone rang, and Lindsay's frantic voice filled the air. She said that Hannah had suddenly lost consciousness. Jason made a swift U-turn, reassuring Lindsay that he would arrive as quickly as possible while instructing her to dial 911 for emergency assistance. Lindsay told the police yesterday that Hannah wasn't feeling well. This morning, right when Hannah's dad brought her here, she suddenly passed out. When Jason arrived, Lindsay was still on the phone. Hannah was lying on the living room couch. She was still unresponsive, her eyes open but unfocused, unable to settle on anything in the room. She was loaded into the waiting ambulance and rushed to Fort Hamilton, where an emergency team stood ready. They were told the devastating news with her family, and loved ones gathered around her bed. Hannah's injuries raised immediate concerns of healthcare professionals. It was clear to them that these were not the result of a simple accident, as Lindsay and Jason's words. Lindsay was brought to the police station for questioning. Facing intense, This presented a significant challenge for the investigators. They had disseminated an inaccurate sketch of the suspect through the media, and to patrol officers, asking everyone to search for an entirely different individual. During the latter part of the interrogation, Lindsay disclosed to the detectives on March 7th. The following day, Lindsay was once again summoned by the detectives. This time she was confronted with graphic evidence detailing the extensive bruising found on Hannah's body. Pressed for an explanation, despite extracting additional details from Lindsay, the detectives remained unconvinced that they had uncovered the complete truth. The severity of Hannah's injuries doesn't seem to be adequately explained by climbing the concrete steps. When pressed further on this discrepancy, Lindsay altered her story once more. This time, she claimed she had been carrying Hannah and they both fell. She had inadvertently fallen on top of the little girl, causing Hannah's head to collide with the metal edge of the concrete step. Lindsay further stated that after they fell, Hannah began crying and demanding her father. So she picked Hannah up and shook her vigorously until she stopped crying. Lindsay admitted to hitting and punching Hannah several times prior to March 8th. Detectives about her own issues, such as miscarriage and relationship troubles, saying that she had been under a lot of stress. So, when Hannah bought a bottle of tomato sauce and sprayed it into the toilet, Lindsay said she lost her temper. Lindsay Parton was swiftly taken into custody and formally charged with assault and child endangerment following the investigation. With a search warrant in hand, authorities combed through Lindsay's devices, findings. Among them was evidence that on March 7th, around 9 a.m., at her initial court appearance, Lindsay pleaded not guilty to the charges. Later that same day, she posted bail and was released from custody pending trial. As Hannah's condition deteriorated, she passed on March 18th. The case developed into a homicide investigation. Lindsay Parton's trial commenced in April 2019, spanning 8 days of
6 months before Michaela's abduction, a 7-year-old girl, Amber, disappeared in the vicinity. Shortly thereafter, Bind out to the girl's mother, offering assistance and regularly visiting her home.
During the trial, footage from Lindsay's interrogations was presented, showcasing her repeated falsehoods to the authorities. In response, Lindsay's defense strategy took an unexpected turn. Lindsay claimed Mission had been coerced by law enforcement. She alleged that detectives pressured her to confess to harming Hannah, insinuating that if she didn't, Jason would face prosecution. Lindsay staunchly maintained her initial narrative during the trial, asserting that Hannah had been perfectly healthy upon arrival at her home. Nothing untoward had occurred before the sudden collapse. Lindsay also adamantly denied ever. Melinda Cook Howard was representing Lindsay for the defense, and it's not entirely surprising to hear who they chose to blame. Melinda argued Jason was the one who inflicted the injuries on Hannah, saying he was emotionless when pictures of her were shown. Interestingly, while Jason readily agreed to undergo a polygraph test, which he subsequently passed, Lindsay adamantly refused to participate. Although the results of polygraph typically inadmissible in court, Lindsay's refusal raised eyebrows, hinted at a potential sense of guilt. The jury deliberated for 12 hours before reaching a verdict. Lindsay Parton was ultimately found guilty of murder, receiving a sentence of life imprisonment with a minimum term of 15 years, along with an additional 30 months for the child endangerment charges. Lindsay will only be eligible for parole after serving 18 years behind bars, marking the somber conclusion to a tragic chapter in Hannah's story. Lindsay's legal team announced their intention to appeal her conviction. Melinda Cook Howard stated that Lindsay was an upstanding citizen, mother, and wife, and has the support of her community. Lindsay maintains her innocence and plans to appeal this. Her family and attorneys say Lindsay maintains her innocence. "We believe that Lindsay is innocent and we will be looking into appeal." Jason also reacted to expressing his deep anger towards Lindsay for what she did to Hannah. "I hope she never gets out of jail for what she did to my..." I hope and pray every single day that you get the same treatment in jail that you showed my daughter." In October 2019 was filed on Lindsay's behalf. The state filed its response in January 2020 and maintained that Lindsay's own confessions and the various expert witnesses support her conviction, and therefore the appeal should not be granted. Lindsay has been adjusting to life in prison, striving to keep herself busy. Assisted 3 inmates in preparing summaries and helped them secure their release. Alongside this, she is doing laundry, tidying up, reading books, and participating in various groups, including music. Moreover, Lindsay has been aiding inmates in obtaining their high school diplomas and is undergoing training to become a counselor so she can assist her fellow inmates in resolving their issues. However, Lindsay still can't stop thinking about going home to her family. She mentioned that she needs to leave before her mother passes away from the shock she caused and before her child forgets who she is. Lindsay explained that she misses her children. Despite being arrested, Lindsay always maintains her innocence, firmly believing that she has never harmed Hannah and that her love for the girl is genuine. After the death of his daughter, Hannah Weshy, Jay founded the Hannah Strong Foundation in Cincinnati to help abused or neglected children. Helping and bringing smiles to others makes them feel.
However, this argument was not valid in modern times, as numerous cases have resulted in convictions without the recovery of the victims' bodies, given the substantial evidence. Moreover, David had a history of violent crimes throughout his life. At 16, he broke into a house and assaulted a woman at night. Michaela's father traveled from another state to attend the press conference announcing the arrest of his daughter's kidnapper. Unfortunately, Michaela's mother, who in David Mitch's trial, the prosecution sought the death penalty, but the district attorney changed, and the new one made the decision not to pursue it. If David is found guilty of all 3 murders, he won't receive a life sentence, only several decades in prison. This decision caused outrage among the victims' families and sparked media attention, with David being the only supporter of this change. However, David is already 62 years old, and there's not much chance he'll live to see the reduced sentence. It's worth noting that had he not been released just a month before the incident, the girl might still be alive today. His trial has not ended, and there has been no final verdict for him, and Michaela's body has not yet been found.
During the trial, Christopher attempted to plead mitigating circumstances, pointing out his difficult childhood from an early age. He was constantly shuffled between biological and foster parents, which greatly impacted him. In the silence of a June night, the peaceful atmosphere of the small town of Edmond, South Carolina, was suddenly shattered. I could thus only eat when he offered it to me, and only then if I thought I deserved it. A symbol of warmth and love, his fist hit me so hard in the stomach that I was hardly able to move, and when he said it, it hurt the most. My family, friends, and parents had lost interest in me and loved me. It was quite challenging, even leading to fatal outcomes. David was found guilty to child endangerment and obstruction of justice, receiving an 11-year sentence with a mandatory minimum of 5 years. As for Christopher, he continues to languish in prison, facing a potential execution. However, given the often protracted nature of death penalty cases, it's entirely possible. They succeeded in placing Jessica's image on posters on the backs of semi-trucks and billboards, helping to spread her story nationwide. The story also gained attention on television programs and in the press, such as the highly popular America's Most Wanted show, hosted by John Walsh, who lost his own son in an abduction. This program called for assistance from viewers in locating criminals, intensifying Stephen Oliver's manhunt. Monica sought help from her brother, and he went to great lengths to track down Jessica. Jason would drive past there on his way to work and pick Hannah up at the end of the day. Jessica feels a connection to her family through prayer, even as she gradually loses her sense of identity. She also recalls a motivating quote from her mother. "That's something my mother used to say, that if something terrible happened, she would find me and my siblings. So I knew that my family in Wisconsin would be searching for me. That's all I needed to survive, to think about going back home and being with my family again.